Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, episode number 204. Roger Raglin. Deer hunting the fence line, location, and common sense. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, Covert Scouting Cameras, the Horny Buck Seed Company, the Euro Hanger, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey guys, this is Fred Bird with the National Wild Turkey Federation and the NWTF Strut Zone All Access Podcast, and I am on my favorite deer hunting podcast, the Big Buck Registry.
Hey y'all, this is Heather Shepard with To Be Outdoors and the Dixie Deer Classic. You are about to tune in to my favorite podcast, the Big Buck Registry.
This is Caleb Miller from Whitetail Frenzy. I'm glad you're tuning in, because I tune in too, to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, fellow predators. Welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. I don't know if this is your first time or your return listener, but I am thankful that you are tuning in right now and you're about to spend a little over an hour listening to some of the best deer hunting advice we can bring to you. We attempt to do this each and every week, and hopefully we're making a change in your life and making it better and making your life in the deer woods a little more eventful, and maybe in some cases we're getting you outside. And I think you'll appreciate this week's guest, and I'll give you some details about Roger Raglin in just a second, but I wanted to read a letter that was sent in to us about our harness program and about the podcast itself. It's from a guy named Trevor. He says, "Hi, Jay and Dusty. Well, you guys don't know me after listening to 193 of the Big Buck Registry podcast. As I write this, I have 8 more to listen to, and I feel like I know you guys. I've loved the outdoors since I can remember and have fished my entire life. I did not, however, have anyone in my life who really hunted at all. Accordingly, I wasn't exposed to anything hunting related. In September of 2015, I shot a compound bow for the first time at 46 years old. Within a month, I was researching turkey hunting and what gear, clothing, calls, etc. I would need to hunt turkeys during the Oklahoma spring season. A recent acquaintance of mine had told me that if I had ever started deer hunting, I would be hooked as well. I thought deer hunting just involved guys shooting deer out of trees at long range. I just didn't understand. I didn't understand that there was actual calling, stalking, tracking, etc. November 7th, I set up on the same spot before dawn. Around 7:50, a doe came in from my right side and skirted by range before crossing the creek. As the route was starting, I expected to see a buck coming from the direction of the doe. Around 8:20, I slowly turned back to my left. Inside the corral, 17 yards from me, is a mature 8-point buck. He was walking slowly and followed the same path as a doe a couple of weeks earlier. As he passed the fencing, I drew once again. He didn't stop, and I forgot to grunt. My shot was up and back a bit, but I knew it would be a kill shot. He fell about 125 yards away. Now my first buck is on the wall of my family's place. While he's no Pope and Young or B&C, I'm awfully proud of my 5.5-year-old 9-point. I just wish I had discovered your podcast 2 weeks before the season ended. After listening to 192 of them so far, I'm confident I would have gotten another deer if I had started listening sooner. Flash forward 6 months, I'm running trail cameras, feeders, and mineral licks in multiple locations off limits to the cattle. I have done some planning for future food plots, but we don't currently have any type of cultivation or planting equipment yet. I've also gotten my 25-year-old stepson into deer hunting. He's more into guns, so he bought a 30-06 right before the holiday antlerless season we have here. During our scouting and shed hunting this spring, we stumbled upon a double ladder stand. The steel is in great shape, so we're planning to replace all the straps, cushioning, pads, etc. this summer. After listening to so many of your podcasts, the importance of safety has become crystal clear to me. Accordingly, we won't be using the stand unless we have all the appropriate safety systems in place. We will, of course, be running a lifeline to the next stand. We do not, however, have harnesses. Knowing that you repurpose tree stand harnesses, I thought it would be better to check with Jay and Dusty. With that in mind, I would love to get on your list for 1 or 2 free harnesses. Thanks so much for doing your show. I truly feel like I've been working on my master's degree in hunting for the last 6 months listening to your show. I feel like I'm more equipped thanks to you and the Big Buck Registry. Thanks again and have a great day, Trevor. What a fantastic email. It just makes me feel like we're doing this with purpose and that Trevor gets it. So, Trevor, you've got a harness coming your way, and as more come in, I will definitely see if I can get you a second one as well. This week's guest is Roger Raglin. I'm sure you've heard the name. He certainly has been around for a while, and I would be surprised if you didn't know who he was. But Roger Raglin is an outdoor television pioneer, and he has been entertaining us with deer hunting videos for over 30 years. We don't see him slowing down anytime soon as he continues to create and edit his own work. Sure, maybe his perspectives on hunting and society have changed, but his drive is still alive. Many people would not typically associate hunting with higher education, at least the liberals don't, but we've learned that there's way more to Roger Raglin than hunting videos and television. Roger is an accomplished pianist and musician and is well known for his gospel collections in Oklahoma and has often played alongside the Pentecostal preacher turned comedian Sam Kinison. Roger also spent many years as an academic where he pursued a PhD at Duke University and has many degrees to his name. Despite Roger's passion for learning, his real love is with hunting and the outdoors. Roger was inducted into the 2011 class of the National Outdoor Hall of Fame, and he is one fantastic storyteller. Before we get to Roger Raglin, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
The Deer News this week is sponsored by the Euro Hanger. You don't have to spend big bucks to hang your big buck. Get yourself a Euro Hanger. Facebook.com/Eurohanger, EUROHANGER.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Powassan virus, potentially fatal tick disease that can be transmitted in minutes, reported in Maine. This story was originally featured on the Fox News website and was reported by Alexandria Hine. 2 new cases of a dangerous and potentially fatal tick-borne illness have health officials in Maine on high alert as agencies across the nation brace for a particularly high population tick season. The patients who were not identified by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention contracted Powassan virus, which differs from Lyme disease as it can be transferred from tick to human in a matter of minutes. It's a virus, whereas Lyme is a bacteria. Dr. Kent Holtorf, a Lyme disease expert and medical director of Holtorf Medical Center, told Fox News, "If you catch Lyme disease early, antibiotics can eradicate it, but with a virus, you have much less options to do anything about it." Holtorf added that the symptoms of Powassan are more severe than Lyme and can quickly reach a patient's brain, leaving them susceptible to long-term neurological damage. The patients in Maine began presenting symptoms in late May and were hospitalized with encephalitis. They've since been discharged and are continuing to recover. Not all patients will have symptoms and not all will be impacted by the infection, but those who are may experience fever, headache, vomiting, weakness, confusion, seizures, and memory loss. In 10 to 15% of cases, the virus proves fatal. Holtorf said people who are most likely to be symptomatic are those who are immunosuppressed or those who have previously contracted tick-borne illnesses like West Nile, dengue, and Lyme disease. According to the CDC, the 2 most recent cases brings Maine's total count to 9 since 2000. Holtorf said the overall recent spike in tick-borne illnesses likely has to do with the warmer temperature during the 2 previous winters and that the pests are developing mutated versions of some diseases. Holtorf cited CDC recommendations to use tick repellent with DEET and advised people who enjoy the outdoors to wear long pants, tuck jeans into pants or socks, and conduct frequent tick checks. With Lyme, you go back, take a shower, and check yourself for ticks because you have time, Holtorf said. The problem with this is that you don't have much time. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum for bringing this story to our attention. Elderly couple loses hunting privileges for killing deer in trophy area. This story was originally featured on the Missoulian website and was reported by Perry Backus. 2 elderly Hamilton residents may have experienced their last legal hunt in Montana. John Post, 84, and Diana Gores, 73, lost their hunting and trapping privileges for 10 years recently after pleading guilty to charges of poaching 2 deer. The 2 were charged last fall after they were caught dragging out a mule deer buck that lived in a highly prized trophy hunting district in the southern reaches of the Bitterroot Valley. Ravalli County has 2 trophy mule deer hunting areas that thousands of hunters seek to draw a permit for each year. In Hunting District 261, 2,185 hunters put in for 35 permits last year. In the adjacent HD 270, nearly 6,600 sought the 45 permits offered there. The Hamilton couple was charged after a bit of good luck led two state game wardens to their vehicle in time to see the Gores dragging a buck down a steep hillside. Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks Warden Justin Singletary said their first call in the case came from a landowner upset that the couple had trespassed on his private road on November 24th. The landowner had called the state tip line after having run in with the couple who were busy getting out of a small fork-torn deer just off the road. After talking with the landowner the next morning, Singletary and fellow warden Lou Royce opted to drive up Gird Creek to look around. A few minutes later, after setting up check station, a hunter came by and told him that an older couple was just up the road dragging out a deer. When they arrived on the scene, they found Gores dragging the deer down a gully and Post scooting down the steep hillside on his backside using his lever-action rifle as a brake. Upon further investigation, the couple was found to not have the proper permits for hunting in that area. Blood on the bumper of their vehicle prompted the wardens to obtain the appropriate permits to also conduct a search at their residence. Royce later found the first deer hanging intact at their home. It didn't have a tag on it either. Gores was charged with 2 misdemeanor counts, each of hunting without a license or permit and unlawful possession of an illegally harvested buck and failure to obtain landowner permission. Ravalli County Justice Jim Bailey required her to pay $1,245 in fines, $500 in restitution. Post was charged with 2 misdemeanor counts of possession of an unlawfully harvested deer and failure to obtain landowner permission. He was fined $585 and required to pay $500 in restitution. Special thanks to Brett Machin for bringing this story to our attention. Grow weeds for forage and fawns. This story was originally featured on the Clarion Ledger website and was written by Brian Broom. For most hunters, few things are prettier than a lush green food plot or wide-open oak flat. In fact, the only things prettier are probably deer themselves. While food plots and mature forests with open understory have their place in a deer's life, so do weedy, snaky brush fields. That's a barrier, said John Grucci, Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Private Lands Coordinator. People don't like to see things grown up. They want to bush hog it bad every year. Instead, Grucci says land managers should be adding this type of habitat to their property. This technique is just another way to have diversity, Grucci said. You want to have a little of everything on your property if you can help it. You're providing food and cover. Food plots are just food. You're including a plant group that provides both. It's an overlooked cover type, and it's very beneficial for deer. Mississippi State University Deer Lab Associate Professor Marcus Lashley expounded on the cover aspect, which he said extends beyond deer. When plants die or become dormant in the winter, Lashley said the fields are still important to deer by providing preferred bedding areas and thermal barrier. Initially, the areas will populate with what non-biologists call weeds and include forages like ragweed and pokeweed. Then it will just progress to a plant community that becomes even more ideal for the deer. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories we featured this week, please check out our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Thank you to Jim Keller with the Deer News. Without further ado, here is Roger Raglan. Roger Raglan, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Glad to be aboard.
This has been a long time coming. I know we've talked about this a few times and finally putting it all together. And I have to say thank you to you from our listeners and from me personally that you took some time to talk to us.
Sure, absolutely. My pleasure.
Very cool. Roger, one of the things that I'm very curious about, because sometimes we don't get much backstory to some of the people that we're fans of. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, where did you call home?
Well, I grew up in a small town, Wagner, Oklahoma, about 40 miles southeast of Tulsa.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny, 14 miles north of Muskogee, and
all right.
there really is a Muskogee, Oklahoma.
All right, I was wondering about that.
About 4,000 people, not just a spot in the road, but a small town. And I was an only child, and my folks, we lived out at the edge of town, literally on the edge of the city limits, and so it was just a perfect place for a kid. My dad gave me a BB gun when I was like 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
So it was a great place for a kid to grow up out at the edge of town where I could, play Holy Terror on the mockingbirds and robins and different critters like that around. And I grew up in a both sides of the family. My mom was a Yoakum, and of the Yoakum silver dog, little Abner Yoakum thing stuff. She was a direct descendant of that. And both had big families, and so just like everybody on both sides of the families were big hunters. So it was it wasn't even anything to think about. I grew up around it, and from the time I was big enough to remember, when hunting season came rolling around, well, my dad was out there with his brothers and cousins, and my mom's brothers and cousins, and when I got old enough, I just rolled right over into it.
Gotcha. Do you remember the first firearm you ever shot? Was it the BB gun?
Definitely. I started out on a BB gun, and then my 22. And then I was pretty young. I went from the 410 right straight to a 12 gauge.
Okay.
And so by the time I was probably 10 or 11 years old, I was shooting from a 12 gauge shotgun.
Wow. Okay. So and fully functioning, no help at all at that point.
No. I was. Of course, I didn't get turned loose, so to speak, out by myself. But being an only child, I did a lot of hunting growing up by myself, and but I don't know exactly what age I was when my dad would just let me take me, and he would just let me go if we were visiting one of my uncles or something that lived out in the country. I was pretty young. I'm probably 12, 13 years old. I remember my first squirrel. I remember my first rabbit. I remember my first all of those things. And those were all monumental days in my life.
Gotcha.
First quail I shot out of the air. Those were all pretty special. And I was actually, I had my dad with me on, I guess, most of those, the first animals.
Gotcha. Your father sounds like he was an influence in your life when it came to hunting. Was he somebody that you really looked up to and learned from?
Well, yeah, sure. My dad and my uncle. But my dad, I told this when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2011. I told a story that it's just kind of hard to believe, especially in the hustle and bustle of nowadays, how busy everybody is. Having raised a bunch of kids, and now I got a bunch of grandkids around. But my dad, I don't ever remember one time, not once, that I asked my dad, let's go hunt, let's go rabbit hunt, or let's go squirrel hunt. I don't ever remember him telling me no. We always went.
Is that right?
He took time. Yeah, he took time. That's just incredible. Of course, he worked for himself, and he was around the house a lot. But he never said, no, I'm pretty busy today, or no, I got something else to do. We went. I mean, many times. Right after school, he'd pick me up. Let's go. Dad, can we go? Do some rabbit hunting over here, or do some squirrel hunting this evening before? And boom, we'd go. So that was really something to. So I got to go a lot, consequently, because of that. And I've laughed about it over the years and said that I think the happiest day of my dad's life was when I turned 16. So he could just give me the keys to the truck. He had an old 4-speed or 3-speed on the column yellow Ford pickup truck, and that's what when I turned 16. That's what I took. I mean, literally every Saturday morning at daylight. I mean, rain, shine, sleet or snow, cold, wind blow, snow flying. I could hear the trucks start. My dad would go out and start the truck for me a lot of times because he knew I was going to get up and head out before daylight. So
that's a good dad right there. Wow.
Yeah. My dad was really supportive, and I'm really glad that he did get to. I didn't get active, in the outdoor industry as a knock on wood, to make a living or as a professional. I was up in my 30s. And, but my dad did live long enough to, see me having success, in making hunting videos and stuff. And so I was really glad that he got to live long enough to see me, kind of take off in the business, so to speak.
Well, that's good. That was my next question. Did he get to experience some of your success that you had entertaining folks that are tuning into the outdoor stuff? So it sounded like he did.
Yeah, he did. And he was, when I took my dad on, I took my dad on a deer hunt. The second year, I started making hunting videos, and that was kind of a rough trip. But then I took him again several years later, and we didn't even know it at the time. At the time on the hunt, he was actually dying of cancer. But by the time when the hunting video came out, then in the summer, he was in the VA hospital, and they'd removed the lung, and he was struggling, but. Yeah. I remember taking that, the video up there, or a bunch of them, handing them out to the doctors and everything, and the doctors all got a kick in. But my dad was really proud, that hunting video. Of course, he was in it. Of course, he was on it as well, and so.
Nice.
It was kind of a neat deal.
Yeah, it's a special time for sure to have your dad involved in something that you were calling a profession at that point. That's very nice.
Right.
Very nice. So after all these influences, and I mean, having a father would take you hunting anytime you asked them to go do that. I mean, I don't believe that happens in today's society at all. Like for any type of activity, much less hunting. So that blows my mind.
Right.
What's your philosophy of hunting today, and what does it mean to you relative to what it meant to you 30 years ago?
Well, I knock on wood, I still like to go, but but as a young man growing up, I mean, it just was a constant drive, in my mind. I mean, I'm talking about even when I was in junior high and in high school, and I'd go a lot of mornings before school, and when it was never late for school, and I was smart enough not to do that, but we'd go pond hopping, and a lot of times would go after school, playing sports, active in sports and everything. But any spare minute I had, I was out there, just with really enthusiasm and really fired up to duck hunt or squirrel hunt or rabbit hunt or whatever it was I was doing. And I still have enthusiasm. Of course, now that I'm 62 years old and having done quite a few things professionally, it's a different kind of drive or a different kind of enthusiasm. I still enjoy it, but boy, back when those younger years, it was really important. And I know it had, it kept me out of trouble between me and you, because
Gotcha.
where a lot of kids were doing a lot of things, or a lot of, of course it was different. It was a bit different back in the 60s and 70s growing up than it is nowadays.
Right.
But still, it took up a lot of my time, and I gave me something to look forward to, as far as activities. I mean, I played a lot of sports, so I was busy doing that too.
Okay.
I was an excellent student, so I did a lot of studying as well. But any spare time I had, I was out there hunting.
Gotcha. Okay. Did you explore anything else outside of hunting during your life? I vaguely remember you saying something on stage at the SHOT Show this year, and
I went to school a long time. In fact, I went to school long enough to be a brain surgeon, if you don't know the truth.
Wow.
I went to college a long time and have a lot of college degrees too. My last degree was I did a master's degree at Duke University, and actually started a PhD there, and was accepted at Vanderbilt and Baylor.
Wow.
And but so I thought I'll just take a little time off here and get away from the academic stress.
Yeah.
And started just painting houses and apartments and stuff in Tulsa. And 1 year went to 2 years, and 2 years went to 3 years, and 3 years went to 4 years. And then next thing you know, I got married, and then here come 1 kid and 2 kids and 3, and so all that kind of got put on the back burner. It was kind of a joke when I go in the Sherwin-Williams store. They'd always say, "Hey, you're the smartest painter in Tulsa." So,
well, with all those degrees, I can see.
I got a lot of college degrees, and I have a pretty stellar background in music. So I'm a fairly accomplished piano player.
Gotcha. So, what were your subjects that you were studying?
In psychology and theology.
Wow.
Kind of heady stuff. I would tell you what my IQ is, but I'd be ashamed that I haven't done more in my life with as high as my IQ is.
Is that right? Very interesting. It's just it's another side of Roger Raglin that we don't see a lot. When it comes to the entertaining side and the hunting aspect. But I knew that. I listened intently when you were on stage. I'm like, there's something I need to explore here. That's very fascinating.
Yeah, well, I'm really thankful for my education in the years that I got. Those were the best. They really were the best years of my life, especially my undergraduate. I went to I did an AA and a bachelor's degree at a small Christian school in Oklahoma City, and those were just very, very important years for me to mature and grow, and they were just as I say, really some of the best years of my life. I had a lot of growing up to do. I started college when I was 17, so I was pretty young.
Right.
And but my education, I don't really regret a minute of any of it. And even though I went in 9 years without taking a break, including a bunch of summer school and stuff, I got kind of a late start in life on some things, but it was just part of the thing. It was just meant to be for me, at least.
Gotcha. And you have a musical background as well. We explore that a little bit. Tell us about what music means to you. Do you listen to music? Do you still play?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I play it virtually every day.
Wow.
I started taking lessons when I was 5.
Okay.
And took lessons up till I was a junior or senior in high school, and I just I really had kind of gotten bored with reading music,
Yeah.
And so I started kind of learning to play by ear, and I kind of got a little bit of a break when I went my first year in at Southwestern in Oklahoma City. I got to be a part of a little musical group, and there was a guy there, a good friend of mine. In fact, I'll see him here in a couple of weeks. We're going to help him with some Wounded Warrior stuff here in Tulsa for an organization. And but he was the pianist that year for Debbie Giannopoulos in 1972, who was Miss Oklahoma. He was her personal pianist. And, we kind of hit it off, and he showed me a few things, and I really kind of picked it up pretty quick, and actually kind of in the gospel field, kind of made a name for myself in the Oklahoma City area, and in fact, in the whole region. I did quite a bit of playing gospel music.
No kidding. Wow. That's fascinating. So you play the piano every day, and do you have a particular genre of music that you prefer?
No, I play a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and
Okay.
And I prefer to play. I do my best. I'm at my best whenever I hear a particular song, and then I come up with my own rendition of it, and sometimes it's a little bit off the wall, but I, play a little jazz, I can play classical stuff. Of course, that's reading music,
Sure.
and I don't enjoy that quite as much,
Right.
but I guess my real forte is gospel music, and what I was really good at was accompaniment. If I was with a really, really good singer, we could come up with I could come up with an arrangement that's pretty salty between me and you.
All right. Very nice.
Yeah. And the most famous person that I ever did that for, and we don't have time to go into the whole story tonight, but I was kind of the personal pianist for a guy that was the funniest preacher I ever heard in my life. And he loved to sing. He would take a Psalms, and he would kind of make up a song out of the Psalms, out of the Bible. And I'd get on the piano, and we would do this with no rehearsal. He would just start singing, and I would pick up, and I would play and make the music, and we would do a song from scratch like that.
Wow.
And he actually went on to he quit the ministry and went to Los Angeles and became a pretty successful stand-up comedian. His name was Sam Kinison.
No way.
You ever heard of that guy?
I sure have. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I knew Sam real well, but I knew him as a minister. I didn't.
Right. Yeah, I remember him.
And,
I remember his story that he was in the ministries and then got into the kind of raunchy comedy.
Pretty raunchy comedy, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But his oldest brother, Bill, probably has, because they always recorded all of those services and stuff. Because his stepfather and his mother pastored a church, the Razor Faith Tabernacle on 21st and Utica there in Tulsa, and they record them. So somewhere in the archives, somebody's got them, or his music, of me and Sam doing our thing, and I would really like to hear some of that. Of course, probably never will, but if I could ever run Bill down, his oldest brother, who's really the only brother that he had that's still alive, that's a pretty interesting story. That is an
interesting story. Thank you for sharing that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Very nice. So you decided to get into the outdoor industry 30 something years ago at this point?
Yeah, this is my 30th year.
Okay.
In the industry.
All right. What prompted you to decide to give it a shot?
If this story is so bizarre, it's just almost unbelievable. When I say paint contractor, it was just me and one other guy, really. I mean, it's not like I ran these huge crews and stuff.
Right.
But, I had a chance to do a lot of, I think that's why I like painting. In the falls, I had a lot of time to go do some hunting, especially deer hunting. Yeah. And after I got out of college, I really got into hunting whitetail deer. But I wanted to try to shoot. I read an article that Craig Boddington wrote about 1985 on the Grand Slam of deer.
Okay.
And I thought, man, boy, I wish I could do that. So, if I could go, I'd never been on a guided hunt, put it that way, So, but you had to have a coos deer, for your Grand Slam of deer.
Right.
And I had booked it. I'd saved up the money. At that time it was $1,500, which was a fortune for me. But I saved up the money to go on a coos deer hunt with Dwayne Adams, and something had come up, and I wasn't going to be able to make it. So I had to put the hunt off for a year. And I called him, and this was like right before the hunt, so it was like in November or early December. And he was a guide out of Arizona, and he said, well, we'll just put the hunt off for next year. I'll just roll your deposit over, and we'll do the hunt. I said, yeah. And he just off the cuff, he said, next year you ought to film your hunt. I said, what? He said, you ought to film your hunt, make a hunting video. And I remember he said, everybody else is, and I'd never seen a hunting video.
Right.
I didn't even know they made hunting videos. And you know what? My wife and I, we hadn't been married very long. We lived kind of in a shack down here, down there off Hickory Street in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. And we didn't own a VCR. So I went to the Blockbuster store, the old Blockbusters, and you could rent a VCR. And I rented right then that afternoon. I rented a VCR, and I said, "You got any hunting videos?" He said, "Well, we got a few." I said, "Well, give me a couple of them." He goes, "Well, which ones do you?" I said, "Doesn't make any difference to me." I said, "Just give me two of them." And he gave me two hunting videos. And I went to the house, and they, plugged everything in and watched those hunting videos. And I thought, man, that's so neat. I didn't even know them. I don't know nothing about this, but I'd like to try to make one of them. And
wow.
And that night, my wife came in from. She was a hairstylist. She came in and she said she's doing the dishes there, and I said, I think I'm gonna try to make a hunting video.
Yeah.
And she said, "Okay, that'd be great." I mean, I'm gonna go get a loaf of bread down the store.
Right. Sure, honey. Yeah, it's fine. Right.
Yeah, it's okay, honey. And so that kind of it just started from there, and I started trying to plan and figure out how I was going to do it, this, that, and the other. And boy, I tell you, it was a miracle that I ended up with a hunting video and spent every dime I had. Oh my Lord!
Oh wow!
And we went on a bunch of hunts, and through the process, the largest video distributor for hunting videos was DMI. They were in Oklahoma City.
Oh.
So I'd driven over there and had met a guy named Sheen Ray who owned the company. And he liked me, and I kept telling him what I was going to do. I'm going to make, going to make this video, and I'm going to make the Grand Slam of deer. I'm going to make 2 or 3 hunting videos.
Right.
He said, "Well, that's good." He said, "When you get them done, bring one over here." And without getting too boring, when it was all said and done, I borrowed and everything. I had the money and edited and got Grand Slam of deer. Got my first hunting video and drove over there. And he said, "Let me run down to my apartment and I'll watch it here during lunch hour. I said, well, it's 2 hours long. So I went with him. I stood outside. I couldn't stand to sit in there and watch it. I stood outside, and 2 hours later he come out. And he said, well, he goes, it wasn't just great. He said, but it was okay. I think I can sell it. He said, send me 1,000 of them. And I remember I about passed out. 1,000, which paid for about 1/10 of what it cost me, to know the truth. But at least we had, we got a start. And
wow.
Anyway, that kind of got my foot in the door for the business, so to speak.
Gotcha. And so today, it sounds like you're still heavily involved. You're doing a lot of editing. Last couple of times we've talked, you said that you're basically knee deep in editing, and it sounds like you edited when you first started. So that's never really left your repertoire of activities.
Well, early on, that was one of the things. After I did the Grand Slam of Deer, then I did a Quest for a Boone and Crockett, but we sold a bunch of them. And the next year, those were my first two. And then I had a bow hunt in October. I had 3 videos out, and I'm talking about back 30 years ago. Boy, it cost $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a piece to have it, to have them edited. And I thought, this isn't going to work. I don't, too much. That's too much. So if I'm going to stay in this business, I'm going to have to learn how to edit. But I figured out early on that if I was going to try to make some money at this or make it profitable, that I was going to have to edit or learn how to edit. So I don't know. It was less than 10,000. I still have them. I'm sitting here looking at them. A VO 9800 and a VO 9850 because you shot on 3/4 inch tapes.
Right.
And I bought an edit, control deck and an edit deck, and they were pretty rough around the edges, but I learned how to do cuts and later got a little box so I could at least do a simple dissolve and fade up and down from black, and learned how to edit and started it. I've been editing ever since then. I edit all my shows.
What's the biggest change you've seen over the years when it comes to videography, where it started, where you started back in the 80s to today? What's the biggest thing? What's the biggest challenge? What's the biggest change for you?
Well, I started making with hunting videos, and so the first 15 years of my career, so to speak, was hunting videos, and then the last 15 has been on television, and so those two, hunting videos and television, it's like comparing an apple and an orange.
Gotcha. Okay.
They're totally. I know that's not an understatement because we didn't have any sponsors. When we made hunting videos, we didn't have sponsors.
Right.
So they were in their purest form. When we delivered a 90-minute or a 2-hour video, it was packed with information and hunts. And now when someone comes up, you couldn't sell. If you want to make a hunting video now, you'd be better off turning them into coasters, and selling them as sets of 6. But because that market is pretty much dead, the hunting video market. But even in recent years, hunting videos that we made, they've got lots of sponsor stuff in them,
Gotcha.
And television is just it revolves around your sponsors.
Right.
And so, it's been a pretty big learning curve to try to, continue to do an entertaining show, and make sure you do what you need to do and have to do to keep your sponsors happy.
Right. And that's another show for another day. I don't think I'll get into all that tonight. But that's fascinating. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Roger, I'd like to get into some deer hunting strategies and tips with you. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Dusty Phillips here for a little bit, and I'd like to just kind of pick your brain about what you've learned over the years about how to hunt the whitetail or just any species of deer. And the Grand Slam seems like a pretty interesting place to go. So I'm going to let Dusty kind of take it from here for a little bit.
Roger, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to find out, obviously you've been super successful in not only, music and college, but in the whitetail and the deer hunting world. Where did all the knowledge come from, and how old were you as a young man when you started?
I didn't get to go deer hunting until I was 14. I wanted to go before then because every year both sides of the family would load up opening weekend of gun season in Oklahoma, which was 9 days. We had a 9-day rifle season, and they'd go camp out for 4 or 5 days, and I never got to go until I'm almost sure I was 14. And so I remember that day like yesterday. Went down to Camp Gruber, public ground over here outside of Muskogee, and my dad stuck me out in the tree and said, "Don't move till I come back," and I sat there till 10 o'clock, never saw a deer, but I was hooked, and but I just was enchanted with deer hunting. There was something about it that just enthralled me, even though I didn't kill. My senior year in high school, I did shoot a really good buck, but I didn't find him. I didn't have enough sense to know about hitting and tracking them. But I killed a little buck that morning afterwards. I did kill a buck when I was a senior. But I went a long time, a lot of years after that. Of course, I was in college, and I was trying to deer hunt every chance I could get while I was going to college. And but when I got out of college, I really thought, man, I'm gonna be a better deer hunter, and bought a bow. Bought my first bow, and I think it was an old Browning bow. Bought it at Dillard's. Y'all ever heard of Dillard's? Like
Sure
a
have.
penny store? Yeah.
Yep.
Bought my bow at Dillard's in the men's section. There were some bows hanging there, and I bought, how about that? And I thought, man, if I go start bow hunting, I get to go. Bow season is 2 months long in Oklahoma, not 9 days. But I just started going every weekend, literally any public land I could find. I hunted so much public land in Oklahoma and Texas and Missouri and Arkansas and Mississippi, and just went constantly, just constantly went. And I went from not shooting, ever shooting, started finally, having some success, and started shooting a little bit better deer. And, I cut my teeth out there rubbing shoulders with lots of other hunters on public land. And so, I kind of paid my dues, I can assure you. I didn't have anybody holding my hand, and I didn't have any money, extra money, I didn't go on I never went on a guided hunt until I started making a hunting video. I didn't know what a guided hunt was.
Right.
So
at the point that you started being a little more successful, what was it that you was learning that made success rate increase?
Well, on hunting public land, which I learned. We were hunting the day. This was a lesson that came hunting down at the Davy Crockett National Forest down by Lufkin in eastern Texas. Mm-hmm. Worked till after dark. Then I had a 4 or 5 hour drive to Dallas. A buddy of mine was the sporting goods manager at a Kmart in Dallas, and I was trying to talk him into. He's supposed to go with me. And we didn't even get out of there till like after midnight. And then, ended up down there at the public ground up in the morning. So we just sit there till daylight, slept in the truck a few hours, and it was all walk-in. So we walk in. I thought, I'm really tired, and I don't want to get in here and get lost. And I have been lost down there many times after that. Let me tell you, but I thought I'm just going to hug the fence line around here. And stay on stay on the public ground, but to kind of stay on the fence line. And I didn't go, a few hundred yards, and just good light. Heard the snort. It scared me to death, And once again, now I would know that was a buck rooting after a doe, but it sounded like a pig rooting, And I looked up, and just out of the heavy brush, literally stepped right in front of me. I'm talking about 5 yards. Was a gagger, huge monster buck, and he took off. He saw me, and we both scared us both half dead. I threw a shot at him, just took my breath. I went, oh my Lord, I've never seen a buck like that. And I walked on out of the heavy brush, again, right on the fence line. I didn't walk 100 yards, and I heard a guy go, hey, and I looked. And of course, in Texas, you don't have to wear blaze orange. And I look around and kind of and across the fence over on the other side on private land, there was a guy sitting underneath the tree over there. And he goes, you be sure to stay on that side over there where you're on public land. This is private land.
Right.
I just looked at him. I thought, I never even thought about going over there. He said, I'm hunting a great big 12-pointer, and y'all don't want, And I thought, that 12-pointer was in front of me at 5 yards. I just threw a shell at him on public land. And I thought, deer don't know. At that it hit me right then. Deer don't know the difference between public land and private land. That guy probably coming to his tree to sit down, push that buck over onto public land right in front of me. And so I never forgot that day, and I've applied that to my hunting over the years, that, on high pressure areas, if I'm, of course I'm not hunting public land anymore, but on high pressure areas, I hug the fence line, because guys on private land push bucks over onto public, and guys on public land are pushing guys over onto private. And if you're hunting the fence line, you get the best of both worlds. I filled my tag many a time over the years hunting right on the fence line.
Oh, it makes complete sense, though. It's
just common sense. It's
right?
Just common sense. I'll tell you a good one. Probably 10 or 12 years ago now, maybe even longer now, I was speaking at the Minnesota Deer Classic, and I did that classic 3 or 4 years in a row. And it's a big classic, 20-some thousand people through the doors. And on Saturday, the seminar's on Saturday. Well, there were a lot of people. And right after the seminar, I'm always really busy, people coming by the booth. And a guy come by, and he said, when you get a minute, I want to talk to you about hunting with me. I said, oh, well, sure. He stood around for a long time, and he came over and he said, I got 8,000 acres. Contiguous property about an hour north of the Minneapolis area here. He goes, I want you to think, about coming up and hunting with me. And well, our mother, I teamed up with Stony Wolf Productions about 15 years ago, and so they're out of Chaska, which is right there in the Minneapolis area, and that's where all the DVDs, and that's where they come from. And those guys live there. And so when the show's over, I called them. I said, some guy come by and wanted me to come hunt with him about 8,000 contiguous acres. And they all started laughing. Roger, you know how much 8,000 acres an hour north of the Minneapolis area? It's unheard of. There's no such thing. So the guy kept calling me because I'd given him my number, and I just was so finally I called the game department about the middle of the summer. Some guy answered the phone. I said, some guy is trying to get me to come right up, and I forget the name of this little town now. And I said, he says there's 8,000 acres, continuous acres up there. And he goes, oh, yeah. And he called this place by name. He goes, that's the so-and-so's place. It's owned by da-da-da-da, and he died, and his kids are all trying to – he said the state is trying to buy that right now. He goes, it's 8,000 acres right in the middle of the best deer hunting in the state of Minnesota. Well, I was trying to get off the phone from the wildlife guy so I could call the other guy back. And I called him. I said, tell me a little bit more about your 8,000 acres. He said, I've had control over it for 5 years. But the game rangers, I told him what he said was true. The kids are fighting over it. He said, but I've controlled it for 5 years. And in the last 5 years, there's been $5 taken off of it. 8,000 acres. It's planted in corn and soybean. It's got a swamp in it. One piece of land, 8,000 acres, on the best hunting in the state of Minnesota. Well, you know what I told him? I'll be there. So I went up for the opening of rifle season, and I spent 2 or 3 days before the season looking it all over. And the opening day, and I couldn't make up my mind what I wanted to do. It was a pretty nice piece of property, let me tell you. And Friday evening, before the opening of the Saturday morning gun season, I asked the guy, I said, where's most of the pressure going to come from? He said, it's going to come from this east side over here. There's a big hunting club. Opening weekend in Minnesota is buck or doe. So anything brown gets shot at. He said, there's like 60 people over on this hunting club. And I said, well, opening morning, and he's going to let me have the pick on the 8,000 acres. There's 6 of us hunting there. I said, opening morning, I'm going to hunt right on that fence line. He said, are you sure? I said, that's where I'm going to hunt, right on that fence line. And I never had so much fun in all my life, the first 4 hours of that season. Guess what come flying over that fence nonstop? It was nonstop. It was like a zoo. Running over into this 8,000 acres. I killed my buck 4 days later, right at daylight, right down in the heaviest, thickest cover along that swamp. And that's where I killed my buck. But, when you stop and use common sense when you're hunting, even if you have a little small piece of property, if there's a lot of hunting pressure over there and it's good deer hunting country, they're going to be pushing the deer over to you. Let them do the work, because deer don't know what's posted or what's not. They just react to pressure.
Yeah, that's definitely common sense, and it makes sense. So once you figured out what they react to, where did you take it to get on a nice mature buck? Did you further your education as far as, obviously the fence rows and the high pressure and the deer are going to move away from the pressure. Where did you go from once you established that, you got to the point in your career that, you're after mature bucks, and I'm not saying you won't shoot a nice buck, but where do you go after once you figure out the basics?
Well, what's the three most important words in real estate? Location, location, location. Well, if you want to have an opportunity to shoot a mature buck, first of all, you got to go where there are some. And so you got to either be hunting on a piece of property or next to a piece of property where the bucks have had an opportunity to get a little bit of age on them, where there are a higher class of deer. So that just makes sense. You have to find those pieces of property to begin with, and that's where you spend I spend about 80% of my time looking for a piece of property and then 20% of my time hunting it. And it doesn't even have to be a big piece of property. In 2001, I told my wife, I said, I'm going to put in for a Kansas deer tag. And I haven't not filmed a hunt in 25 years, 20 years. I said, I'm going to go up there and I'm just going to go hunt like I used to, just for fun and not worry about a camera. And right before that, I had a fan, knock on wood, they had invited me to come up a Unit 11 Kansas deer tag, which is the southeastern part of the state, just north of where I live. I thought, I'm going to go up there and start hunting with him for a few days, and then I'll just work my way back down towards Tulsa. I'm not against looking and knocking on doors, but right before we left on that hunt, or I left on that hunt, a buddy of mine, Steve Jones, an outfitter from New Mexico, called me. He said, "You going to hunt Kansas?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to hunt Unit 11. He goes, "So am I." I said, "I'm not filming it. I'm just going up there to hunt." He goes, "My dad's got some property in Chanute." He goes, so we came by and we put a plan. I'm going to go up and hunt with this fan that had invited me. He had a 300-acre farm, and Steve's going to hunt in and around Chanute. And at the end of the first day, we're going to, we'll call each other and find out. And at the end of the first day, Steve said, "I got something pretty interesting. You might want to come down here." So I went ahead and hunted the next morning, told the guy thanks, met Steve at the Jack in the Box there in Chanute, Kansas. We drove 7 miles north of Chanute, 3 miles back east. Went up, it's really big open country. Went up and knocked on a guy's door, and a little short, bald-headed guy named Sam come to the door. And it's kind of funny, but it's true. He was an ex-rocket scientist for NASA, and he was in his 60s. He had retired, just moved back from Houston, and moved out on the farm. And he brought a deer out that he had killed. And I looked at it and I said, "Oh man!" And it was a Boone and Crockett, giant Boone and Crockett buck. And I said, "Sam, did you kill this?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Where'd you kill it?" He goes, pointing through the window in the kitchen. He goes, "I killed up underneath that tree." I looked out and I didn't see a tree, And he said, "Well, see that pond? See that bush?" I said, "Oh, that bush by that pond." He goes, "I was sitting on the ground underneath that bush." I said, "How close were you to him when you killed?" "Oh, about 5 feet." He said, "You want to see my bow?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he brought out, you could pull it sideways. He was strung at 35 pounds. First deer he'd ever killed. And I said, "Well, Sam," I said, "do you think you could get us some permission to hunt anywhere around here?" "Well, why would I want to hunt around there?" "Well, because look, obviously it's pretty good genetics floating around." And we got permission on an 88. Went down there and looked at 80 acres, flat as a pancake, nothing on it, flat, nothing. But guys overlook really sweet guys overlook honey holes every year all around the country because their thinking is off. They look at something and don't see what the potential is. When I look at a piece of property, here I am, in Kansas. Sam, 185-inch 10-pointer he killed is right up the road. That's pretty quality genetics floating around there. And I asked Sam about all the neighbors, and come to find out that this 80 acres is sitting right in the middle of over 2,000 acres where hadn't been a deer shot on it in 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And I told him, "Well, we're going to take this. We're going to hunt this property." Steve looked at me and said, "There ain't nothing on it." I said, "That's okay. That's okay." I said, We're going to hunt this property." So we went back, went in town, got a motel, come back out, just parked truck out there and open. And there was a little pond down on one end. I said, "Steve, you go down there and sit on the ground by that pond." We had one little old row of shrubs that split it. It had been planted in corn and then baby soybean. It had been harvested. There was nothing there. But I said, "I'm going to walk down this shrub row that splits the property, and I'm just going to stand down there in the shrub. I said, that's our plan. And it was 4:20 when I got down there and stopped and found a little old thing I could kind of lean up against. And at 20 minutes to 5, I looked up. I don't even know where he come from. It just kind of surprised me. He had to come out across that open field off the neighbors. I could just see 7 times on one side. I was pulled my gun up and knocked him down. He was 165-inch 7 field rest 213 pounds. Killed him in 20 minutes, But I was hunting in a spot that, where over 2,000 acres, not a deer had been killed in over 8 years. Well, that's pretty good. Only had 80 acres to hunt, but still, you put yourself in a position, these places where around you there are mature deer, one of them's going to walk out there where you can poke a hole in him.
I'd say
maybe not in 20 minutes, but he will eventually.
I'd say it's safe to say, Roger, that a piece of property that's prime is often overlooked just because the visibility of hunting access is not what today's standard is produced out there on the hunting shows and what people talk about. I think that often, more times than not, the big mature buck's going to travel the adjacent property no matter what the terrain or condition is. It may not be premium.
Well, we get, without making somebody mad, with him I might, but, our these television shows that, not everybody, but that most people are producing, they're skewed in that they're getting everybody to thinking that, you can take a little piece of property and if you pass up the forked horns the next year, or in 3 years, you're going to kill a big giant deer, and it just, it doesn't work that way. And so many of these shows are shot on premium, well-managed 4,000 or 5,000 acre pieces of property, and a guy hunting a little bitty small piece of property, and all of his neighbors around him are killing everything that walks. The odds of you ever killing a big buck are virtually zero. So if you want to up your odds, then you have to get away from well, you just have to use some common sense. You're going to have to get and hunt next to I tell people this there's housing in Kentucky. There's horse farms. There's all kind of places you can get up next to the fence line and hunt. Just don't shoot over the fence. The bucks are going to be rutting. They're eventually going to come your way. You may not see the numbers of deer that you're used to seeing, but if you want to kill a big mature deer, you've got to put yourself in a position where there are some, and not just dream about a pipe dream that, I'm going to pass this deer up, Well, if all your neighbors are shooting all the deer, it don't make any difference if you pass one up or not.
Right,
They've got to all be doing it too, and it just doesn't. And in most places around the country, people are just not going to do that.
Right, for sure. So we get a little about your deer tactics, and I want to touch a little bit about tree stands. And I know that as many years have you been in the outdoor industry, and I'm sure that you've put your butt in multiple different tree stands. Where does that come from the beginning to where it is now as far as manufacturing of tree stands?
Oh, my Lord. Well, that has to be that's a great question. That has to be one of the biggest changes, along with trail cameras now.
Right.
The first few years I hunted white-tailed deer, I would take a hammer and 8-penny nail and drive it and get up there into a fork of a tree and sit there all day. There weren't any tree stands.
Right.
I still have some of the very first tree stands. The old got one chain, you throw around, and that was it. Oh boy, they were death traps. So yeah, it's the tree stand industry. Boy, we're in Cadillac heaven now compared to what we had 30 years ago. 30 years ago, there really wasn't anybody making tree stands.
Right.
Just homemade stuff.
What was the first tree stand that you recall that was a manufacturer that you was able to hunt out of?
Well, I can't. I've still got it out here. It's hanging in my shed here, but I can't remember the name of it. It's just been too long ago.
Yeah, I understand. No, that's completely fine. But what was your mind thinking whenever you went from the number 8 nails to an actual set of steps and a tree stand that hang on the proper way?
Well, it was nice. Let me tell you, it was sure nice, and they weren't that bad either. I mean, they were expensive to us, but they were $30-$40, and you could afford to buy a couple of them, so you had more. You didn't have to take it down and put it up several times. But But I've done so much hunting from the ground over the years. The tree stand hunting, and I still much prefer to shoot out of a tree stand than a ground blind personally. But I think that's one reason why I'm kind of scared of heights too, just a little bit. I've done so much hunting from the ground over the years. I don't do it as much now because if you're going to hunt from the ground, you have to sit still. You have to be able, even when you're still hunting, you move a little, but then you got to sit still. And so I've bushwhacked a lot of deer going from tree to tree, just hunting from the ground. Let me tell you.
Right, that makes complete sense. Let me ask you, and you're no spring chicken anymore. Do you have trouble with getting up into a tree stand these days?
No, I don't have any trouble. No,
that's great. I was just curious to ask that because you've got some age on a young man like myself, being 35 years old, and I always wonder what happens when you get Roger Raglin's age. Are you going to have trouble getting in a tree stand?
Yeah, well, I don't. Right now, I can shimmy up a tree, and I don't jump from limb to limb, maybe, but you don't have to anymore, as nice as stuff is. But I'm 62, be 63 here in just a couple of months, and I still don't have any trouble going up and down tree stand. So that's one thing I am thankful for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I stay pretty active, I had quite a few battles in my life. In 2009, I came back from Guillain-Barré and they told me that I'd never be able to climb a tree again and or play the piano. And so, that's my thinking was, well, that's what you think, so.
Right. For sure.
A lot of things in life, no matter what it is, a lot of things in life is just you having the determination to just go do it, and then when you fail, however you failed at it, that just means you learned one way that it didn't work. So let's try something else.
Absolutely.
And I think everything in your life, even people that battle illnesses and everything, that you've got to just have the mindset that I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to just fight this thing and not pay attention to what you're supposed to be doing, but go ahead and do what you can do, and then what you can't do, keep working and keep trying and keep plugging away. Just don't ever give up.
Absolutely. As far as bow technology, where did you start with a bow, and where is it now? And if, by that, I'd like to know what kind of bow you're shooting today. But let's go back to where you first started shooting a bow. Where'd that all start at?
Well, I mentioned earlier I bought my first bow at Dillard's, and in the men's clothing, there was just a rack there and had 2 or 3 bows on it. I bought the prettiest, shiniest one they had. I think it was a Browning. It was a Browning bow, I believe.
You still have that?
You know what? I actually gave that to my neighbor. I wish I did have it, but I gave it to my neighbor who liked to bow hunt or liked to hunt, and I asked him if he'd like to have it, 15 years ago or so, and I sure would like to still have that. But I met a real pretty little gal that I was kind of wanting to spark, wanting to chase around, but when I was single, and her dad was a big bow hunter. And so, a way for me to get to see her. This is literally when I first started bow hunting. I went over there to shoot bows with him, and he laughed at me. He goes, "That's the shiniest bow ever." I said, "Yeah, it's pretty." And he goes, "Yeah, but you don't want that. You want to paint that thing." He goes, "You don't want the shine on it." He goes, "Let me have that thing." And he sprayed that thing down, and I'd kill me watching him spray that brand new, but I sure wanted to date his daughter. And, but, it was the best thing that ever happened. So, I didn't even have sights on it. He kind of helped me get sights on it. So I befriended, we became close, really never did get serious with his daughter, but he and I became close friends up until the day he died. And he kind of got me into the bow hunting thing and what I should do with sights and all that kind of stuff. And it was so funny. I've told this story. It's really funny. One of my favorite seminars. Of course, when I do a seminar, it's not like when I do this interview. I'm kind of all over the place a little bit. I don't have a set thing. the greatest trophy of my life, and I've killed over 100 bucks over 140 inches. I've killed a few big deer, but the greatest trophy was first doe I ever killed with my bow. And I struggled trying to kill something. And that morning I finally ran an arrow through that doe with my bow. Oh my Lord, it was the greatest day of my life. And that thrill and excitement that I got of finally, of shooting something with my bow, I thought, man, I don't know what this feeling is. I said, but I want a lot more of it. I have got to become a better deer hunter. And that day set me on fire. And I covered a lot of ground in a short period of time, mentally and emotionally, after I killed my first deer with a bow. And I was a different person after that day. Let's put it that way.
That feeds some kind of emotion that it's unexplainable. That's for sure.
It is, and you can't explain to somebody that doesn't. I went to my 10-year reunion. Of course, I was single, and I was just barely out of college, but I was out of college and single. And I'm interested in chasing girls, and most of the people I went to school with, they're married and had kids, and they're all showing the pictures of their kids, and I want to say, well, they look like little squirrel monkeys to me, little newborn, but they're trying to explain to that, until you have your own child, you can't explain to somebody what it's like to have a kid, and I think that's one of the kind of a pitfall that we may be falling into in the outdoor industry is that we keep trying to do things to appease the non-hunters and let's face it, 90% of America are non-hunters. We're a pretty small fraternity, the little group that we are, and we're trying to explain to them the excitement and thrill, and between me and you, they don't really care. You can't explain it to them. You can't explain what the thrill and the excitement of shooting a white-tailed deer is, and they've never done it. And you can't do it. It can't be done. But now we're kind of getting into this mode. I see it more and more the last few years that we're getting into this trying to make it sound okay to them that we hunt, and we do that by throwing this blanket of, well, we hunt because we eat what we hunt. That's why we do that. We're hunters, but we eat what we hunt, and that's why we hunt. You know what? That's not why we hunt. We hunt because it's the thrill and excitement of the hunt is why we hunt. Now, we eat the animal. That's a side benefit. But we're not out there hunting to eat something. We're hunting because of the thrill and the excitement and that feeling that you get when it happens to you that you can't explain to somebody else, and that somebody else will never understand. So quit trying to explain it to them, and then let's quit trying to apologize to them for what we're doing. I'm not apologizing to anybody. One of my best friends is not a hunter, and he don't understand why I'm a hunter, and he wants to be an anti-hunter, but we just don't bring it up. I said, let's just don't talk about that. You're not going to be a hunter, and I'm not going to stop, but we can still be really good friends.
Right.
And let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, I bet that's a super interesting.
I got on my soapbox there a little bit, but that's kind of the way it is.
Right, for sure. Where are you at today as far as archery? What are you shooting today, Roger?
Well, I signed last fall on to shoot for Gearhead, and it's really on the cutting edge of the newest technology in archery, and they're built kind of like a bridge. They don't look just a hole when I look at it. My bow's a 24-incher. My son shoots a 20-inch bow. And I'm telling you, they're as good or better than any bow I've ever shot in my life. And I'm not saying that because I'm shooting for them. They just are. They just got that really cool, neat technology that they put into these bows. They weigh 3 pounds. They're light. They're small. They shoot nearly 300 feet per second. We killed 4 or 5 deer with them last year. And if you hit them in the right place, it's a real nice bow. Yeah,
we've had Gearhead guys on the show before, so that's we like their product, and we've definitely had it in our hands.
Yeah, I just got the new crossbow in last week.
No kidding.
And I have the aluminum. I don't have the carbon, but I got the aluminum. It just weighs 5 pounds, and you can shoot with one hand. It's really a nice piece of equipment, and
absolutely.
And they just don't. I posted a picture of the other day of one of the bucks I killed last fall, and he goes, "What is that ugly looking bow? I can't believe you're shooting." I thought, man, the thing weighs 3 pounds and shoots. It's a humming Jesse. I really like it. So
right, yeah, it's Skip Peterson. I couldn't get it in my head.
Yeah, sure.
We know Skip pretty well, and good people and good product.
Yeah, Skip's a good guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you're with Gearhead now. Is there any particular broadhead that you prefer over the rest, Roger?
Well, I've shot the Muzzy for 26 years.
Right.
And the MX4 is still my broadhead of choice.
No kidding. That's probably one of my top favorites right now also.
Yeah. It's just hard to, make myself shoot some. And I shot year before last, the new Trocar 100, I killed 2 nice bucks with it, and it did fine. But that MX4 is just, it's just a workhorse. I just think it's the best broadhead in the world, and I really like it.
Very good. Let's cover just a quick touch on camouflage. What kind of camouflage are you currently using?
Well, I've worked with a bunch of them here in the last few years. True Timber. I wore Illusion last year, and I'm kind of amazed. A camouflage really, really works good, especially when you're able to sit still. So camouflage is more for a hunter's psyche than it is anything else.
Right.
And there are times that it really, it's important. But the sitting still, nothing beats sitting still and not being too fidgety when you're sitting up there.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, Jay, you want to get on with Roger here? And thanks for running through all your strategies and tips and techniques and what you're using and where you've come from today.
Sure, thank you.
Now, Roger, we usually get into like a memorable deer hunt at this phase in the show, but we've really covered a bunch of memorable deer hunts. And I think for the sake of time, if it's all right, I'll just skip over to the 10 rapid fire questions.
Okay. Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, very good. Here's number 1. What's your number 1 hunting tip of all time?
I guess hunt the perimeter of fence lines is a pretty good one.
That's a good one. I like that. All right. We all have these things that we like to have with us when we hunt. Sometimes they're good luck charms. Sometimes they actually make us a more effective hunter. Other than your weapon, what's that one thing that you feel like you got to have with you on the hunt?
My deer calls.
Okay. All right. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
People who want me to act like they do.
That's a great answer. That's the best answer we've ever had on this show on that question. That's excellent. All right. So go back to when you were 30. Knowing what you know today, what would you tell the 30-year-old Roger Raglin?
I tell him the same thing I tell every young person that's wanting to get in this business. Just be true to yourself. Always be yourself. No matter what you try to do, make sure that you keep your own identity and be your own person.
Excellent advice. All right, you're on a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and you meet a stranger in the hotel lobby, and they strike up a conversation. They ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I kill animals.
All right, excellent. All right, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
I didn't have breakfast this morning.
Okay. On the side of a highway, there's a blank canvas. It's a billboard. It's a blank billboard. You can put anything that you want on it. What would it say?
Have faith in God. Be true to yourself.
Excellent. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. All right. Good answer. What's a typical day in your life look like?
I'm up. I bring my wife coffee in bed.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure that we're raising 6 grandkids, make sure the grandkids have breakfast. Then I'm down here to the office to work on the business, work on the shows.
Okay, excellent. All right, and then last question, what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like?
Up very early, up at 4. I have to be up at least an hour before I can even think straight.
Right.
And then slip into the woods, not real early before daylight, but slip into the woods just as light starts to break.
Okay.
And get back relaxed and with my deer calls and my deer scent, and if I've done my homework, I'm expecting to shoot something.
All right. Very good. Those are the 10 rapid fire questions. Thank you for doing that. You did quite well. So, Roger, where can we find more about you? Where's your social media at right now? If we're listening to this and we want more information because we're fans of yours, where would we go to get more content?
Well, on our Facebook, and we're on there. We're posting stuff every day or every other day. It's just Facebook/Roger Raglin Outdoors.
Okay.
And then have a pretty good website, just RogerRaglin.com.
Okay. All right. Very good. I'm on it right now. I'm looking at it. See a lot of deer heads hanging on your wall.
Yeah.
Yep. Very nice. Hey, Roger, I have to say this has been an honor and a pleasure, and thank you so much for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. It's I've been thinking about this show for a long time, and I'm glad we were able to finally put it together, and it's just thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
Hey, I appreciate you having me on.
Man, Jay, I tell you what, talking with Roger definitely educated me on how far he's come with his life and the knowledge that he has on not only the whitetail, but the music industry, and he's got a great education that backs all of this. And I tell you, he said he edited his own stuff, and that's phenomenal. It's a one-man band, and he's able to roll along and do what he wants to do with his own hunting show.
When I heard him talk at SHOT Show on stage about his education, I thought he might have been joking, but he wasn't. I mean, the guy is a very intelligent, well-educated, very eclectic person. I mean, he has capacities to do all kinds of different things, and he chose to do hunting videos for a living, which if you think about that, you're like, well, why? I mean, he could be a concert pianist if he wanted to be. He could be a philosophy scholar if he wanted to be, but he's here in the hunting industry with us, and he's been entertaining us for 30-something years. And I love, what I love about Roger? He speaks his mind. Yeah, he's not trying to be correct in this world, as some people call it, and he's voicing his opinion, and he's in it to kill deer, not just to go out there and sugarcoat it. He's killing deer and enjoying himself, and he's killing to eat and eating what he kills. If you watch his videos or catch him on a TV show, man, he's whacking them, stacking them. That's for sure. Just authentic. That's the only word I can think of. So he's authentic.
Absolutely. It's great to see somebody that's still leading the industry and having that outlook on hunting, and the way that he presents it. In reality, there's some things I agree on, some things I don't, as far as ways everybody's trying to be politically correct and try not to fester the antis, but that's going to happen no matter what, till somebody takes and does what we're trying to do, is better educate an anti-hunter so they understand about conservation and disease control, and as far as healthy herd management. There's all kinds of aspects that's overlooked, because people that are anti-hunters, they don't even want to hear about how an animal's dying or what's happening. They're just so anti.
Right. Exactly. Well, that was an absolute pleasure listening to Roger, so we'll have to do that again someday. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, Jay, some people have food plots out.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
And if you do, and you're doing some kind of grass or clover, it's probably time to mow them. Give them that first cut of the year. By doing that, it allows for new growth to come on, and more nutritional value in that new growth. And obviously, the nutrition's what makes the antler grow. So to give them the best opportunity to become the biggest mature deer that's possible. So get out there and mow them food plots off. If you've got them planted and they've been up a month or two, it's time to mow them. Keep the weeds down and bring up some new, fresh nutrition for your herd.
Very cool. Thank you to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice. Let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. Just want to give one more shout out to all of our sponsors: Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, Covert Scouting Cameras, the Horny Buck Seed Company, the Euro Hanger, and Morse's Sporting Goods. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.